to see there is one behemoth right now, I think, that comes to everybody's mind in wearable technology. And we've been blessed to have their CEO come here and spend some time with us on stage, talk about the past, present, and future of technology, and also how to create this viral product that tons of people have been picking up and buying. So probably the first wearable platform to market, one of the most influential wearable piece of technology, and I'd say one of the most influential and fun guys to spend some time with on stage. It's Eric, CEO of Pebble, Eric Migicovsky. Come on up here, Eric. Woo!
Good to be here.
It's always good to see you, dude. Let's talk about, like, I mean, really, you were around when the business side of wearable technology took off. I mean, wearable technology has been around for years, and you guys went through all the pains that all the entrepreneurs have to go to today. Why don't you give us kind of the early day bird's eye view of Pebble and what it was like?
It started off about 6 years ago now, in a dorm room, as a lot of these stories do start with. We were building something that we wanted, something that we actually wanted to use, which was a watch that would show us when we got a new text message. That was literally the first thing that we wanted to do. It didn't even have to tell the time, though that was a pretty well-requested feature after we first launched. I think the biggest game changer for us, obviously, was going on Kickstarter. But I'd say that one of the most important things that we did since going on Kickstarter was actually get to the point where we could ship and start getting feedback from those customers. Because when we launched, we were one of the first products that worked with iPhone and Android, which meant that a larger percentage of the population could use it. But we focused on 3 important use cases right at the start: notifications, remote control, and sports and fitness. But at the same time, it could have meant anything to our customers. Our customers could have said, well, this magical watch, it works with iPhone and Android, it can do anything. And some people did say that, some people were much more realistic. But by the time we got to ship, and we started shipping to our customers, we had to help form, what would it do on day one? What could Pebble do for you, and how could it help you live your life better? That was hard. That was incredibly hard.
So from, in one, I think something happens with entrepreneurs where we get this weird form of insanity, where there's this tingle, right? And it's this thing that drives you to do something insane. And at least 7 or 8 times along the path, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like, from the time that you had that first initial inkling until the time you said, okay, well, let's do this thing, like how long was that? And when did you really push it out?
So we actually built several versions of the watch before launching Pebble on Kickstarter. We built a watch that worked with BlackBerry, which some people might remember. We're from Waterloo, Ontario, so that kind of meant we were going with the hometown favorite.
Home team.
When we moved down to the Valley in 2011, we realized that there was this thing called the iPhone that was quite popular, and we had to figure out how our product could work with iPhone. But getting back to the experiences that people have, they change over time. At the beginning, it was just about text messages. It was just about seeing my BBM on my wrist.
Okay.
But what we realized in 2011, when we launched the first SDK for Impulse, our first watch, was that people wanted to hack on this thing. We had about 1,000 watches out there in the world. We launched an SDK that we had written in about 2 weeks. And within 6 months, there were 100 apps available for Impulse.
Oh, wow.
So a ratio of like 1 app per 10 watches, like distinct watch faces and apps. It was crazy. I mean,
it's like almost instantaneous community. So first off, talk about, were you wearing this around campus? Like, were you guys still in college with your watch?
No, it took us about 2 years to get to the point from a prototype to an actual usable everyday product.
That seems like eons today, because people are rapid prototyping. It's like, oh, you get this, and PCH does something in like a week. I mean, you guys you're trailblazing at this point, right?
We had to make it up as we were going along, but yeah. I think that's fair. I think nowadays people can get to the point where they're prototyping and making something useful faster. Whether you're building on top of an existing platform like Pebble and you're just integrating an extra sensor or something like that over Bluetooth LE, or if you're using like modular electronics, you could actually make your own. I think there's SparkFun, as well as this company called Seed Studio out of Hong Kong, or out of Shenzhen, sells these little flexible FPCs. You can basically make your own Nike or Jawbone app or something like that.
Right on. Yeah. Very cool. So like, back from this, because we're going to cruise along pretty quickly. What were some of the things that you wish that you'd had as an entrepreneur that you see available today? We're like, oh man, we could have rocked this out pretty quick.
I think experience is pretty much the only thing that helps you move quickly. You can try. You have to try as many things as physically possible before you can get to the point where you have users who are actually paying you money and extracting value from the product that you make. That just takes time. There's no way to like skip around that. What you can do is compress that by moving quickly and then getting to the point where you're talking to customers sooner. Can't really.
Yeah, I love it. And then you guys, so you guys blew up on Kickstarter. You're starting to ship your products. You're getting all these things out there. And I remember I was in VentureBeat, and the CTO of VentureBeat, Chris Perry, got his first Pebble watch. And the dude was so incredibly stoked. He was like, yeah, oh man. He pulls it out. I'm going to do this. And I mean, you would have thought that he could build anything from this point.
It took a little while from the time that we launched and started shipping units to Kickstarter backers to get to the point where it was a platform that other people could build on top of. Some of the things that we learned along the way was that supporting multiple platforms like iOS and Android is a very difficult thing. I mean, it seems easy at the front. We had some people at the company who used iPhone and some people who used Android, and so we said, yeah, of course we have to support both. How could we make a product that half the company's not going to use?
Yeah, exactly.
But then that one decision that we made, I guess it's like 3 years ago now, has ricocheted into this fractal of complexity, where we have apps that run on iOS and Android, Pebble first-party apps that run on iOS and Android. But then we also have third-party developer apps that are built on top of the Pebble platform that talk between the watch and the smartphone. When we first launched our SDK last year for Pebble, we enabled iOS and Android apps to talk directly to the watch. What we didn't realize was that was adding, I mean, we realized it, but we went ahead anyways, but that was adding a second level of fragmentation to the platform, where you would have Pebble apps that would talk with particular iPhone and Android apps. And we had to get past that. Back to the Office example, we were talking about our favorite apps at the time, and there was this really cool app that would work with iPhone, or there's this really cool app that would work with Android and Pebble. And we were getting back to this fragmentation problem. So we said, how could we solve this? How could we enable developers to write an app for Pebble that would magically work with both iOS and Android? And we settled upon something that we're calling the JavaScript API. So it's the ability for you to write a very simple app on the watch, basically something that paints the UI and interacts with the buttons and the accelerometer. But then all of the logic is written in JavaScript. That gets run inside a JavaScript environment inside the Pebble iPhone and Android app. And it means that developers can write once for Pebble, and then it does magically work on both iPhone and Android.
I think I need a level set, guys. Like, seems pretty basic today, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, of course you would do that. I mean, but this was really revolutionary back in the day, right?
Well, I mean, this was a year ago, and it was revolutionary to us, but I think it reemphasizes the point that you have to get so far that people are actually using your product and making something and extracting value, because we wouldn't have been able to predict this problem. We were barreling ahead so fast just to get to the point where we could ship the watch and start getting user feedback, that there's tons of things that you don't really think about, the added complexity that will come later. But the sooner you get to that, the sooner you'll kind of uncover these problems and you can start working on the next generation of things.
Well, I mean, it's quite a big defensibility play, right? I mean, for you versus like other platforms, the fact that you can work on all these multiple different devices, that you've been able to kind of pull these things together. I mean, everyone is trying. Like, I don't think most people understand the complexity of fragmentation in the mobile ecosystem, and that was this huge pain for years and years and years. But now you see, multiple different devices, multiple different wearables, multiple different UIs, multiple.
So I think I totally agree, and I think that's a serious problem that we all have to work within. It's a constraint. 1.2 billion Android phones out there. 700, 800,000 iOS devices. That's a large market, and all of the products that we're working on interact with these ecosystems. What we're working on at Pebble is figuring out how wearables can form their own ecosystem without having to be tied back to the phone as a central platform. One of the big things that we're working on internally is how can we use Bluetooth Low Energy to enable Pebble to talk directly to sensors and wearables and other devices in your life without having to bring the phone into the equation. This enables a lot of experiences around the house, proximity, location, proximity to other devices, but it also allows you to have that kind of perfect, sports and fitness experience where you go for a run and you don't have to carry your phone. You can literally just use your watch, your Pebble, and the sensor or the other device that's interacting with it. Pebble can then capture and store the data on the watch. When you get back in range of your phone, it spools the data back to the app or the interface that you've built.
No, I think that's great. And it reminds me of early mobile advertising where the clicks would just keep rolling through and it would wait in order to connect to the thing in order to render all of that. I think one of the things that I'd really like you to do, because you guys have been at the forefront, you're an overnight success in 5 years, which is fantastic. How do you paint the future in 2-3 years out even, and then bring it back to us? How does that future happen for wearable technology in general and for Pebble? Show us what, if you were the grand lord of all wearable technology, what would it be?
It starts with hackers. It starts with things like, I don't know how many of you guys have played with Spark.io, which is a tiny little Arduino that has a Wi-Fi chip on the back. It starts with people just taking these devices. The very first version of Pebble was built with an Arduino attached to a tiny little NRF radio chip. It starts with people just connecting the dots and trying out different things. The beautiful thing is there's all these platforms that now exist that you can tie your product or your sensor or your device into to add value to that original product. Back in 2008, when we were starting working on this, it's funny to think about it, but BlackBerry was the only mobile platform that had a Bluetooth API. So it was literally the only thing that we could connect a watch to. Android and iOS, they had kind of jailbroken and hacked together solutions, but we couldn't make a product around that. Nowadays, it's unfathomable. In fact, just on Monday, you see iOS release HealthKit and HomeKit, major advances in how other people can build products that integrate with these existing ecosystems. I think Pebble's going to be exactly the same way. As we move forward over the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be an ecosystem forming specifically around wearables with devices that have low power consumption, that are designed around kind of contextual interfaces. You walk into a room, things begin to happen. You pick up your device, you pick up a bike, other things begin to happen. And that's not going to be built necessarily around the phone. It's going to be built around wearables.
I love that. And so you're seeing this contextually aware, interactive internet of wearable things kind of emerging, and you see that the developer community as being kind of the, I don't know, the savior's probably not the word, but they're the driving force behind a lot of this. Is that what you're?
Yeah, we're pretty much, I would hope that we're pretty much all of our own first users.
Yep.
I mean, you have to build something that you want to use.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so from there, so from this contextual future, what do you see some of the issues to overcome? I mean, because this is building context takes data. Almost all this data stuff is flawed, and then you have clouds where there's tons of flawed data.
What it takes is developers being able to make informed decisions about whether the user wants to interact with their device or their service at that time, that location, that area, who's around you. That information has to be boiled out to the developer. It has to be exposed. Right now, a lot of the major platforms like Apple and iOS, or Apple and Android, they silo all of that data. You look at Google Now, you look at Siri. There's a lot of context that's stored within those systems, but they're siloed. As a developer, you can't interact with those systems. You can't extract data from Google Now. You can't inject results into Siri, and that's flawed.
Yeah, no, I think this is one. We're seeing a lot of amazing wearable technology come out of Europe. Yet you talk to a lot of the the engineers, the entrepreneurs, and they are completely freaked out about the personalized data, about using or leveraging, the consumer's data for anything, and it puts them in such a distinct handicap, so that they can actually create the contextual world that we want. Like, how do you balance, privacy versus convenience, as a CEO of like probably one of the biggest wearable technology?
I think the Health Kit is actually a great example of what iOS announced on Monday. The ability for someone to aggregate data and then selectively enable the user to allow other apps to interact with that data store. I think that's a good model.
Okay. So we're here. Like, what do you like? Paint for us what are we going to see from Pebble in the near term future and going forward? Give us like the big high-arching, vision.
So last year, when I was actually speaking at Glazed, I talked about how developers were a central focus to what we're working on. That hasn't really changed. We're building a platform. We're building the ability for other people to play out their ideas of what wearable technology may be on top of a platform that's here, that has 400,000 users, and that's actively being used around the world. So that's still a massive focus for us. I think what we're adding on top of that is the ability for the watch to exist as a platform, a symbiotic platform with the phone. The phone can be there for times when you need internet connection or instantaneous data or to remote control an app that's running on the phone. But at other times, there needs to be the ability for you to write an app for Pebble that can exist when the phone connection is not there, and potentially have that connect to other devices over Bluetooth Low Energy.
So on the epithet is probably not the world. What do you want this company that you built with your team to represent in general for the world? Like, at the end when it's all said and done, right?
I don't think it's going to be over at any point, but yeah, I see what you mean. I think we're building the next generation of computing. I think we're building what we imagine is the right form of human-computer interaction or computing for the wearable world. You can't just take old legacy technology and jam it into a new form factor or new platform and expect that to be the experience that will be the best on that platform. It has to be new, it has to be well thought out, and it has to be perfectly and custom tailored for that experience.
So fantastic. Well, there's one last question because we're almost out of time, and what is the big takeaway and the big advice that you could give to, like, because a lot of these guys are like your little brothers or little sisters, right, building this stuff. They're all kind of walking through your shoes now, and they do look up to what you guys have accomplished over the time. Like, what is the thing that you can give to them as far as advice?
One of the most important things to do is ship. That I can't begin to overestimate the power that it is to have shipped something to customers and to get into that feedback cycle. It's almost impossible to know exactly. It's quite impossible to know exactly what your users want or expect or want to do in the future before you've made a first pass at it. The first time that you actually put a device onto people's bodies or get it into their hands or start getting developers to build apps for it, you won't know until you do that. So I would encourage everyone to launch early and often, get the device out there, make sure that it delivers a good subset of features. Maybe not everything in the world that you were ever planning, but a solid three solid experiences. That's important. And then take it from there. There's so much opportunity after that, but getting to that first point when you ship is pretty much one of the most important things that you could ever do.
Oh, thank you so much. We landed perfectly on time, Eric. Always a pleasure to see you, brother. Thank you so much for sharing time with us. Audience, thank you guys for spending some time with us too.
Thanks very much.